A little bit of ecstasy. Hello everybody, my name is Pej. I'm here today with Beginnings Treatment Centers and we're going to talk about ecstasy. What is ecstasy? I mean, let's think about it. What's the word ecstasy mean? It makes you feel ecstatic. It's a drug. It's MDMA, methylene dioxine methamphetamine. That's the chemical compound, that's what goes into ecstasy. There's also MDMA, there's MDA, there's mollies these days that a lot of kids are doing. It's a stimulant, definitely, that's for sure, but also it's kind of a hallucinogen too as well. So people use it in many different settings. There's nightclubs, there's raves, there's dance events, places like that where people like to do ecstasy. They like to mix it with things, or they just like to do straight ecstasy. So it's really interesting, like in the 90s, like actually it was late 89, when I first was introduced to ecstasy, we were going up to LA. We lived down in Orange County at the time, but we were going up to LA and there was these little after hours underground clubs that were sometimes in warehouses, and they were like abandoned warehouses or just regular warehouses. They were illegally being operated. People would just go in, they'd set up this music. There was different types of music. There was house music, there was techno music, and at that time, like this move, like we went from straight nightclub lifestyle to going to raves. And we went from being like alcohol drinkers to straight up like all weekend binges of ecstasy. And every time that I did ecstasy, I would throw up. That was just like, that's what it does to you. I would throw up every single time. The other day I was talking to a friend and I told her, like, every time I did ecstasy, I threw up. She goes, everyone threw up, Edge. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not unique. I'm not a unicorn. Anyway, so what would happen? So basically you do it and about 15, 20 minutes, the onset of it comes on and it like overpowers you. And it's like this oversense. It's basically the highest form of bliss. Like you just feel like you're in love with the world. Like you just want to love on everybody. Anybody that's around, you want to hug them, you want to love them, you want to be with them, you want to dance with them. It's purely ecstasy. It's ecstatic. It just makes you feel like you're just, bursting out of your skin with excitement for life. And I remember, like, for all the years that I did ecstasy, that nothing was like that first initial time when I did it and I felt it. There were different types of forms of ecstasy that we would get. So sometimes we get them in capsules, but often, like during that time, there was a lot of ecstasy pills that came in the form of pills. You get them and they had different imprints on them, and sometimes the imprints were things like dolphins, Mitsubishis, Mercedes, Superman, and when you were talking about amongst your friends, you would talk about like, what's the good ones? Right now the Supermans are really strong, really good. When I say super strong, super good, you don't know where these things were being made. I mean, was it made by a chemist in the lab, or were they being pressed by somebody who came up with some of the ingredients to make them? Because a lot of the ecstasy that was out there wasn't really pure MDMA or MDA. They were cut with things. Some people would cut them with heroin and things like that. At least that's what we would be told. Sometimes they were totally bunk, like they didn't work at all. Sometimes there were these ones, they were called the All-Stars, and everybody wanted the All-Stars. Like, there was a certain imprint on them. I don't remember what it was. I think it was a star. That's what it was. Yeah. All-Stars were like the one. And we chased those ones for a long time. If we got them, we had thought that we got the mother lode. If you got your hands on the All-Stars during that time and you were at a rave, you would be partying so hard, like all night long. Everybody was just like in a festive bliss. Like everyone's all dancing, all getting down, and it makes you sweat a lot. Some of the things that we used to do when we would do ecstasy is put like Vicks rubbing vapor cream inside of a face mask, like a surgical face mask, and put it on our face so you can kind of just get the full effects of like the ecstasy and what it would do to you, and how you would just be like dancing and feeling it, and you could make friends with anybody on it. You just wanted to like engage, get to know people. You were open to anything, a lot of people, and it was a lot of people like wouldn't use it really sexually because you're just so out there, but people would mix it with like acid, like LSD, and they would call that hippie flipping. I remember that if we started like on a Friday night and we would go out to a rave or to a nightclub or a dance club or something like that, the second we would do it, it would last. When he did it, like for about 15 minutes it took until it hit us. And then for the next 3-4 hours, it like was intense, like just straight intensity. Like you were just and it seemed like it went by really fast. But by the time the 3-4 hours wore off, you could do more. Sometimes we would mix it with methamphetamine. If you did some meth with your ecstasy, you feel that full effect again, and you're ready to go more and more. Before you know it, like you'd go into the nightclub, you'd go into the dance club all night long, and then it would go into the morning hours to where we'd seek out these after hours clubs like coconut teasers. I remember we'd go to this place called Coconut Teasers, we'd go into downtown LA to like lofts that were at the top of buildings where people lived, and there was still music going on there and DJs and everything. And it's like when you're on ecstasy, you get the full effect. Like music is enhanced to the fullest. And if you like house music, if you like techno music, it sounds that much better. Like it's just like a full-on body high, full-on head high. Everything is in sync together, and it's like superb. It's beautiful. It's out of this world. And I'm not saying this stuff because I want to turn anybody on to ecstasy. I'm just telling you my experience and how it felt. Now, here's the downfall. Whenever we would have those long, drawn-out weekends of bliss and entertainment and fun and all that, by the time the weekend was ending and we had to go back to everyday life, if you really had an everyday life during that time, I didn't really, but I know that Monday was the come down. Like basically Monday you come down really hard. The body is like landing. The mothership is now trying to just come in for a landing. And before you know it, by Tuesday, now that it's like kind of coming out of you, you're drained. Like not only was I drained, but I remember experiencing like major suicidal ideation. Like I'm talking like to the point where I was just disgusted with myself. I hated life. I hated the way I felt. I couldn't believe that I was so drained. And what was happening was basically I was depleting my serotonin, like to the point where I all of the receptors, the dopamine receptors that were going off in all different directions during those 3 days, my body could only handle so much. So when it was actually time for me to come down, at this point, my body was trying to get back into everyday living, which whatever that meant, right? But regardless of the fact, I hated it. Sometimes I would tell myself, I'm never going to do this again. I got to stop doing this. I don't like the way I feel. By Wednesday, I was somewhat starting to normalize. By Thursday, we're getting closer to Friday because Thursday's Friday Junior. And by Friday, it's like, let's go to the rave. Let's go to the party. This is going on. That's going on. Let's get some more ecstasy. And, when you're a street dealer and you're selling ecstasy, you can make a lot of money because you could buy your pills for, anywhere from, they would call them boats. Like if you got 1,000 pills, they would call that a boat. So if you were buying it $5 to $8 to $9 and you were selling for $20, it was, lucrative. It was profitable. Like you could make a lot of money. And that's sort of like what I was doing. I was getting them, and sometimes I didn't know who was getting them from where, but they would just tell me this is really good and they were a reliable source. So I would sell them. And not only was I trying to sell these things, I'm trying to be like a businessman, and I'm using my own product. Not a good idea, because when you're sauced, especially on ecstasy, you're really out there and you might actually lose a lot of money. But it's not like ecstasy is not prescribed. It's not. I believe that there was a time when ecstasy was available to marriage therapists. They would give them to people that were struggling in their marriages or in their relationships, and that was to help them bond more. But then they were banned by the FDA and they were taken off the market, and it's not available, like not even by prescription. So if you want to hear my crazy crystal meth, the devil's dandruff story, click right here.